Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Keenan, and I'm an indie builder. The main product that I focus on right now is something called Flowser. It's a non-deterministic agent platform for small teams. In other words, it's an easy way for any team with non-technical background to use OpenCloud. So if you have heard OpenCloud, it's a non-deterministic agent, which is quite different from the traditional agent workflow like NAM. So today I will be hoping to demo some of that differences because OpenCloud is also capable of deterministic abilities, but there's some shortcomings between the two approaches, right? So if you want to connect with me, scan the QR code right there or go to webkeenan.com. My LinkedIn is there. There's also a waitlist form if you want to connect with me by email. And just a little bit of introduction, I also host a lot of co-working sessions for builders. The next one is happening next Saturday, so if you want to come build something, we welcome beginners as well, so if you're building something tech related, you can come to our co-work session on Luma, Ho Chi Minh City, right? So just a little bit about OpenCloud. Who here doesn't know how OpenCloud works? If you don't know how OpenCloud works, can you raise your hand? So most of you do know how OpenCloud works, but I'm still going to explain it just a little bit. So OpenCloud is a harness around different models that make the model more useful. Some of the two most important features of OpenCloud is the ability to use something called browser tools, right? So a few years ago, we had something called Browser, which allows LLM to interact with your browser, right? By clicking on different elements on the page, taking a snapshot, figure out what to do next, and take an action, right? The second thing that OpenCloud can do, which also any LLM can do, is call an API, right? There are official API out there. If you give it the right authentication, it can take an action like fetching some data or writing to a database, right? The differences between these two approaches are browser tools are usually very token burning because it has to do a lot of round trips. It has to go to the browser, figure out what the structure is, what elements are there, decide to click on one, and then take the actions, right? And the results it returns is very unreliable because there's no structure at all. You might define some structure for it to return, but sometimes it doesn't get enough data to fill in all the structure in the schema, right? And also, because of the lack of structure in data, it's very hard to store those data for reuse in the future. Whereas with official API, it's usually very efficient, right? Because you're just calling API and you expect a certain data format to come back. Hence, data storage is possible because the result is always reliable. But we don't really have API for everything, right? We have API for a lot of things, but many services don't have API for certain features of their platform, right? Which is why they came up with browser tools. You know, like if you don't have an API for it, you use browser tools to do that actions. What I hope to demo today is something in between as well, where you combine these two concepts, browser automations, but with the reliability of an API, right? And we're gonna see how that looks later on. So just a little bit of basic demo of how OpenCloud works, right? So this is, oh my God, that's so small, okay. Hopefully that's a little bit bigger. I think I'm gonna try something. Let's hope it works. Okay, light mode, right? Perfect. So it's a little bit like easier to see, right? So this is a platform that I'm building. It's called Flowser, and it's basically an easier UI to use OpenCloud, right? So something I want to try to do is so I'm going to try a very simple request, and I expect OpenCloud to use the browser tools to go to a website and get me some latest news, right? Let's see how it performs, right? So it will navigate to vnexpress.vn and get the latest news for me. So it's opening the browser right now to the correct website. And you can kind of see that right here is reading the page content, right? So taking a snapshot of what's on the page. And once it had that snapshot, it will think for a little bit and summarize to me the news, right? So this is the basics of what OpenPlot does with browser tools, right? Very simple. Another thing that we showed before is official API, right? So with this particular OpenPlot instance, I happen to already connect it with my Gmail account, right? So this OpenPlot agent has access to the official API of my Gmail. So we're gonna try to ask it to so get my latest email. So very general instructions, and it should be able to recognize that it has access to this API and calling the correct endpoints here, where it executed a fetch email tools to get me the latest emails, right? So exactly what I showed you before in the Excalibur board, where you have browser automations and you have official API, right? So both of these got me like 2 emails, right? So this particular chat took about 100,000 tokens, right? That's a lot actually, because OpenPlot is very token burning. And I think the previous one got about 62,000 tokens because it was a relatively simple request, right? But you can kind of see how both appear, right? So with these 2 simple requests, the difference is not too much. But imagine that if I ask OpenPlot not to just fetch the news, but for example, to get me like 100 pieces of news, right? It would have to go round trips 100 times to get all of these data. And what we expect to happen is it would not just waste about 60,000 tokens, but a lot more. Whereas if you call an API, the workload is uploaded to that API, so similar to An's presentation before, where you have like different uploading to a sandbox or a script that handle things for you, right? So right now I'm going to demo a more complicated workflow that demonstrates what I mean, right? So in this particular agent, I also gave it access to my social media account, right? So in this particular browser, it has my LinkedIn account. So I'm going to ask it a relatively more complex request, which is, can you get me like 25 latest posts on my LinkedIn feed, right? So what it would have to do is it would have to open the browser to my LinkedIn account, which has my credential logged in already. So right now what it's doing is it's hallucinating. So I'm gonna try to ask it to use the browser, right, instead of the official API. Because there's no API for you to get LinkedIn posts on your LinkedIn feed. Right, so it's opening the browser right now. And what I expect to happen is it's gonna do the same thing, where it go to the tab, take snapshot, determine that the first snapshot, there aren't enough posts to fill in 25 posts, so it has to scroll down to get more posts, right? So that's what it's doing right now in the browser right here. In the meantime, I'm going to go to a dedicated agent that I have built a particular workflow, so basically a script to get this 25 posts more efficiently, right? So I'm going to paste in the same request, and we're gonna try to compare the differences between if we just ask raw OpenPlot to perform something randomly, and it will use browser automation, versus when there is a pre-built script for it. So just checking in with the previous agent. Okay, we're gonna wait for this to return some result first, right? So what's happening here is when I gave this request, it's reading a skill inside a folder that I defined before for LinkedIn engagement, right? To get my latest post. And in that skill, it recognized that it needs to call the collect feed script, which I also wrote before, right? So just to give you a visualization, this is what it looks like in the skill folder. So LinkedIn engagement, there is a skill folder, and there are different scripts that I wrote for this particular task, which is collect feed, right? And we can of course observe that it's working in the browser as well. If we come back to, I think the previous task right here, just open it in a different tab for easier comparison, right? With raw OpenClaw, I think like it reported back here that it got 5 posts, but need to refine the extractions, right? So here, actually, it's doing something very smart, right? It's not blindly scrolling through OpenClaw, scrolling through the browser, but it's trying to write some script, right? That inject into the browser, so it doesn't have to do round trip, but still because it's quite a complex task, I think it's still struggling with getting back the result, right? Whereas if we go down here, it's still running, collect feed post. It already finished getting 25 posts from our LinkedIn feed, and it already closed the browser, right? What's interesting about this workflow is because this workflow is just code, right? It's just script. You can actually do very interesting things besides like saving tokens and besides having like very reliable results. You can do very interesting things like you can save the result and it get back into a database, right? So right here you can kind of see that from my LinkedIn feed, it got posts from these people, right? These are people from my LinkedIn feed, and if I go to the latest entry in the local database here, see that it got from Shinet Yu, Ventricore, Charlie. Yeah, so you got like these people here, Ventricore, Shinet Yu, right? So these people, it got like data from my collect feed, and it saved to the DB, right? And in total, that token around 100,000 tokens in total. And if you compare that to the raw OpenClaw workflow, where it tried to figure out how to do it on its own, it's still running, it's still not done, but it's already like taking up like 300,000 tokens. And if this continues, it's still running, by the way, it's gonna burn tokens forever until it figured out how to do it. So this is the benefit of having a reliable script, right? So that's one demonstration, but you might wonder, this is just like data collections, right? I wanna show you another demonstration. I'm gonna stop this right now so it doesn't waste more tokens. I'm going to show you one final demonstration of how this can be very helpful for a more complicated action, which is not just getting the data, but actually taking actions, right? So let's say I have a rather complicated workflow here where I have like different Facebook pages of different homestay in Dallas, and you might have more, but I only have like 5 here, and I want to ask for the quotations, right? But I don't want to do it manually, so I can ask my travel planner agent, which has already built in a script to do this, and I'm going to show you the script later to do it, right? So just send it right here. And just to show you the workspace of what the script looks like, this is the data trip, and the script that it's going to use is not in here, but it's in skills folder, right? So we have something called Facebook Work Messenger, and the script that it used, I think it's this one right here, right? So how I came up with this script is I iterated with the agent, so with OpenClaw here, 3 hours ago, just 3 hours ago before I came here, where, okay, scroll all the way up. So I basically had like a non-functioning version of the script, and I asked it to like debug, right? And it took screenshots and it ran script and verified itself to make sure that the script works. And after like different rounds of debugging, it finally like got a working script, right? So that is what's running right now. So it does take a lot of tokens to develop like these reusable scripts, but once they are set up already and they're working well tested, you can expect that it can save a lot of tokens in future runs, right? So right now it's running. It's going to different homestay Facebook pages, and right now it's going to this page to send a message to this homestay, right? It's not gonna send it because I'm running it in dry run mode. So you know, I don't like accidentally send random messages to them and they will block me, right? So it's doing this for like 5 homestay pages. It went to another homestay. And then what the script does is the script just figured out different buttons on the page to click to open that checkbox, to scroll down, to find a box element and to type the message in, and it will basically run that in a loop, right? So that's what the script does, but all of this script is figured out by the agent itself. Right, so this is what the script looks like inside, right? So there is a default message, different selectors that it needs to be aware of, and it knows how to close the chat dialog after pasting in, because on Facebook it opens a lot of chat dialogues and it might confuse which one to paste the message into. So it closes all of them, and it gets like where's the chat input box that I can paste the message in. So all of this I didn't write, right? I didn't even use Claude Code. I just iterated with OpenClaw inside this interface to iteratively look at the DOM, figure out what to do next. But instead of just taking the action, save that into a reusable script so that it can reuse in the future, right? So I think the script is done working. So we reload this, right? Okay, right. So it's taking about like 140,000 tokens so far, and I think the script is having some bug actually, because it hallucinated and it started to using the raw browser tool to click around, right? But you kind of get the idea. The script is not perfect because I only made it 3 hours ago, but the script I made with collect post has been very well tested over time, so it works a lot more reliable, okay? Yeah. So that is the end of my presentation. If you would like to try out what I'm building, we are releasing private to people who sign up on our waitlist. So connect with me at this URL. Right? There's a form in there, so just put in your URL and I should be reaching out to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, question. So how do you handle the account ban by LinkedIn or Facebook with OpenClaw?
So LinkedIn bans you if you are spamming them, right? And if you are using bot to fully autonomously run your account, right? So yes, you can be banned if you use this in that way, right? I try to build scripts that first of all requires my approval. So even when it is figuring out the reusable script, it doesn't actually send a message, right? Particularly designed to have guardrails, so okay, only paste it in and stop, right? Don't actually send it, right? So we know that it actually works, right? And of course, when it comes to the sending part, we can build in some confirmation flow where the agent kind of like check in with you to see if this is what you want to send before you send it out, and you want to limit it with reasonable like a number of actions. You don't want to send hundreds of messages in a few minutes, right? If you send 5 messages in maybe 10 minutes, that's fine, right? So that's the first thing. And also, this is something interesting that we built into our product, which is if you go to, let's say, fingerprint.com, which is a service that a lot of like big companies use to detect bots. If you use OpenClaw on your laptop, that's fine because it's a normal browser. But if you use it inside a VPS, which is what I'm doing right now, it's very highly likely that like your browser will be detected by anti-bot services, right? So right now it's saying that I am being detected because I don't have like a proxy here. But I think if I go to, for example, like the LinkedIn brand mirror, which is somewhere that I added a proxy in here to basically make it look like a normal laptop. The benefit of running OpenClaw in the VPS is it can run 24/7, but it doesn't have like normal human signatures, right? So you kind of have to build in these normal human signatures to prove that it is a human behind the OpenClaw, right? So that's what I've been building. It doesn't work completely too well. I think I need to reload this for this site to show up. But you can kind of see that the suspect score here is lower because I added in a proxy right? So in this particular agent, I added in a proxy. There are also like different parameters that I have to tune the built-in browser to make it look more normal, but basically that's how it works. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you, man. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Tina. Yeah. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Please connect with people after this. Now we come to a very interesting session. I request everyone to have attention, okay? Would I invite David come to the stage? We'll talk about his open source project, Codex Autorunner. Yes, David, please.
Okay, thank you. So we'll be doing something a little bit special today.